One of our favorite family movies to watch is My Big Fat Greek Wedding. And we love how the dad uses Windex for so many different things. It's this multi-purpose thing for curing not just problems with your glassware, but also with your health. He can use it for just about anything. I thought of that when I was thinking about talking about grace, because sometimes I think when we think about grace as Christians, we understand its usefulness, so to speak, with regard to our justification. We understand that grace is the reason that we don't get the punishment that we deserve, that instead we receive God's favor and our punishment is paid out on Christ. But there is another function of grace that often goes untalked about in the church, and that's the one I wanted you to see today. Titus 2:11-14 is going to teach us some things about grace that are worth paying attention to. Listen to this. It says, "For the grace of God has appeared, bringing salvation for all people." So did you hear it? There's that piece of what grace does for us when we're justified before God. But it doesn't just stop there. Let me read it again. "For the grace of God has appeared, bringing salvation for all people." Now listen to this next part. "Training us to renounce ungodliness and worldly passions, and to live self-controlled, upright, and godly lives in the present age, waiting for our blessed hope, the appearing of the glory of our great God and Savior, Jesus Christ, who gave himself for us to redeem us from all lawlessness and to purify for himself a people for his own possession, who are zealous for good works." Did you catch the dual nature of what grace does there? There is grace operating in our justification, and then there is grace operating in our sanctification. It says that grace brings us salvation, and then it trains us to renounce ungodliness and worldly passions. That the work of grace in the life of the believer renders us people who are zealous for good works. Don Carson has a way that he speaks about sanctification. He calls it grace-driven effort. So we're striving to do things that please the Lord, but we're doing so with the driving factor being grace. We do so as those who understand that grace has been extended to us, but that grace is not something that just lives in our past at the point that we became believers, that it's actually operating in our lives daily to change the way that we perceive the world around us, to cause our desires to align with the desires of the Father. A lot of times we talk about what it means to be gospel-centered. And I think we're often speaking of being gospel-centered with regard to justification only. Justification is good news. It is good news that we have been delivered from sin's penalty. But there is also good news in sanctification, that we are daily, increasingly being delivered from sin's power. And that's a process that, if we're to take this text at its value, is fueled by grace. So have you told yourself that there is a sin pattern that you can't stop getting into? Have you told yourself, no, this is the thing that is too hard for me to break? Maybe it is a way of speaking, or maybe it is a relationship that always degrades into a gossip session or into a gripe session, or maybe it's something bigger than that, that you've been afraid to even articulate because you don't want to stare it down. Well, there's hope for you today in these verses, that the grace that was yours at the moment of your salvation is there for you in your daily ongoing battle with sin. And we're encouraged in that passage to battle well and to understand that when grace does its work, partnered with our hard-working efforts that are fueled by the joy of knowing that the penalty of sin is removed, that it will yield us to people who are zealous to do good works.